Welcome to Evil Live, the live media commentary show that answers the question, how many primitive screwheads do you have to kill before you get to Ash? Subscribe if you're new to the channel because today we are reviewing Eden Studios' Army of Darkness role-playing core book. Now, for those of you who don't know, Army of Darkness is the third film in the Evil Dead trilogy of films. There was then a remake that was sort of not necessarily a reboot, but just a reimagining, which was brilliant, called The Evil Dead, or actually just called Evil Dead because the original is called The Evil Dead. And one thing that's always, and there's, of course, I just did a reaction video earlier was it in December of last year? I don't know. Late last year, a review of the upcoming Evil Dead film, which I think is more of a sequel to the reimagining than it is to any of the original three films. And I bring all this up because I'm a massive fan of the Evil Dead franchise, but Evil Dead has had, if nothing else, problems with licensing and rights ownership. So the first film was its own sort of entity that was sold off to get released. The second film was its own entity to a different production company, sold off, and they had to actually like reshoot scenes from the first film in order to have them in the second film because of the license issues. And then Army of Darkness came out, and that had its own licensing issues. So when Eden Studios, which is a role-playing game studio company, they operate what's called Unisystem gaming system, and they have other franchises like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, for example. When they wanted to do an Evil Dead role-playing game, they had to go with Army of Darkness because those were the only rights available. But the reality is the Army of Darkness role-playing game is the Evil Dead franchise's role-playing game. They just only had rights to the Army of Darkness, so that's how they framed it. Legal issues. That's how IPs work. They're insane. So when I learned that there was an Evil Dead role-playing game, and even Army of Darkness, and arguably, well, actually, no, it's not even arguably at all. Evil Dead is the most campy and slapsticky of all of the Evil Dead franchises. And that's including the series that Stars produced that, released, they didn't really produce it. But they had all of the rights to everything but Army of Darkness for their TV series. And that ran a number of seasons, and it was amazing. And if any of you have ever watched my, I don't know, contributions, I guess, to the horrific podcast, we actually reviewed the Evil Dead game that was also released, which actually has rights to everything as far as I know, except, well, no, even including Army of Darkness. So it has rights to do whatever it wants with everything from the TV series to the first three films, and maybe even, as far as I know, maybe the reimaginings of the films. So they're doing a really great thing with that game. It's sort of a deathmatch survival type game. But you can go to the Horrific Podcast YouTube channel and see our live play of the actual game, and also the multiplayer version of the game, that is. And then also our review, I think, is up there. If I'm remembering correctly, I can't remember if we actually reviewed that. Anyway, when I found out there was a role-playing game, I was incredibly excited. I've been playing role-playing games since I was a little kid. I found the Dungeons & Dragons box set. It's called the Basic Set, actually, which was a box set that my stepdad had been given by his former wife. And it sort of had me spiral into this world of every single new friend I had from middle school all the way to high school, getting all my friends to play. And whether they enjoyed it or played a second time is an entirely different reality. But I always did really love the idea of shared storytelling. And I talked about this a little bit with the Call of Cthulhu starter set review. I just love the idea of getting around with friends and sharing stories. I think it's great, whether it's a campfire tale meant to scare you or whether it's something to make you laugh, a humorous anecdote or a joke. The idea of storytelling is a very human construct, and it's our way of sharing and understanding the human condition. So that's really where I come from. I'm not so much of a nerd. Like, I get bogged down by rules and interpretations and trying to be the most powerful person or whatever in any given game. I just want to be a part of a really fun story that either makes you afraid excited, laugh, cry, whatever. It's all wrapped up in the human condition. And I know Dungeons and Dragons has a bad rap because it was super nerdy for my entire life growing up. And even recently, though the nerds say that it's not nerdy anymore, I'm here to answer that question. Yeah, it's still nerdy. It's always been nerdy. It will always be nerdy. And that's okay. Who gives a fuck what other people think? As if you're enjoying it, that's the only thing that matters. You can be as cool and as fucking whatever as you want, but if you enjoy something that other people find nerdy, are you going to stop it just because other people don't like it? And if that's the case, who are you living your life for? Yourself or other people? Inquiring minds want to know. That being said, I think you need to really wrap your head around the idea that this is not Dungeons and Dragons. And I say that because if you're coming into role-playing games for the first time, it's easy to think that there is this sort of universal rule system based around a 20-sided polyhedron dice. And different games have different game mechanics. And you can break this down from Monopoly to Clue to Mousetrap or Sorry. Different board games. Each board game has its own game mechanics. Role-playing games are the exact same way. Most of the time, this is because role-playing games want to differentiate themselves from each other. Sometimes it's meant, and in the best cases, it's meant to further enrich the game experience. So the game mechanics are closely related to the game. There's a game I'm going to be reviewing coming up in a couple weeks called Nomine. It's a Steve Jackson role-playing game that's a sort of reimagining from an original French role-playing game about heaven and hell and angels and demons and stuff. It's one of my personal favorites of role-playing, but no one I know has ever played it, and I can never find people to play it. But it's a 3d6 dice system, 666, and the whole idea around that is that it's germane to the concept of the game. And so the game mechanics pay off because of the game. In this particular case, Unisystem is really based on your standard set of statistics. And this sounds strange if you don't really understand or you're not experienced with role-playing games. But you play a character, like an actor plays a character in a film. That character has certain stats telling you what they're good at and what they're not so good at. And those are personified by stuff like strength, dexterity, how quick and maneuverable you are, how intelligent you are, how articulate you are, how strong you are. So these different stats let you know what you can, as a character, successfully do or not do. And that helps guide your decisions in the story that you're telling. It's really not as complex as maybe it's coming off. Anyway, Unisystem uses the idea of using not only those stats, but also skills that you may know. So those skills may be firearms, it may be driving, it could be computer use, it could literally be like anything you really want, but they have like a set list of skills that you can sort of buy into at character creation and kind of customize your character however you want. So when you are going to try to successfully do something in the game, let's say you want to punch a deadite in the face, you would then use one of your stats, probably strength, and then one of your skills, probably kung fu, or whatever the skill is for fighting. And those are your two numbers that you would then add together. And then you just roll a 10-sided dice. It's very simple, very streamlined, very stripped down. It's all based on a single 10-sided dice. You don't have to worry about, like in Dungeons & Dragons, you have 4-sided, 6-sided, 8-sided, 10-sided, 12-sided, 20-sided, and 100-sided dice, generally. In this, you have a 10-sided dice. It makes it infinitely more simple and easy to understand. So if you want to do something, you roll the 10-sided dice, you add your two stats that are relevant, and that tells you how successful or unsuccessful you were. That number needs to beat whatever the deadite, for example, their ability to dodge your punch is. And that's all on the director's side of things, or as many people in Dungeons & Dragons refer to as Dungeon Master. Basically the person running the game for the players. And so as a player, all you really have to know is I need to roll a 10-sided die, add my two skills, and then I tell director or the dungeon master, and then they tell you whether you successfully punched the deadite or you didn't. It's very quick when you're getting into the actual game and doing it, and it's very simple when you're trying to understand the concept of it. There's not a lot of minutia when it comes to situational environments or anything like that. It's really just roll the die, find out what you did, and move on from there. So it's supposed to be a little bit more fast-paced, a little more stripped down, a little more simple to digest. The problem with that is that, one, it's easy, this isn't a problem, this is actually a benefit, is that it's easy for people to get into it. The drawback is that if you don't have an applicable skill, then you have to double the original stat. And so instead of using your ability and your skill, you're just doubling your ability. And that begs the question, well, why are you using 2 stats in the first place? Why don't you just use 1? If the point is to strip it down and streamline it, well, then do it. Just do it. Have the 1 stat, roll the 1 dice, add the totals together, and have that be the answer, instead of relying on this 2 system. And I think that's the downfall of what I took away from reading this core rulebook is the introduction to the Unisystem game and like the game mechanics, and realizing that I think it's just not as clean as it could be when you really get down to it. It doesn't need to be any more complicated than you roll a dice and you add 1 stat and you're done. Storytelling is meant to be fluid, simple, and enjoyable. And when you're bogged down with the idea of, well, which stat am I supposed to be using, and then which skill, and then, am I supposed to be like doubling them or not doubling? I mean, it gets ridiculous, really. And there's no reason for it. That's why Dungeons & Dragons has suffered for so many years, why people who love board games, who do love board games and do not get into role-playing games, the reason is because they get convoluted and kind of crazy, and maybe they're just not good storytellers, as the second reason. So anyway, my initial takeaway of this is that the system itself is a bit lacking, in my personal opinion. But this role-playing game, again, the backbone of it is the Unisystem, which Eden Studios, who published it, uses for all of their games, just like Wizards of the Coast, and formerly TSR, used their own game system for Dungeons & Dragons. And you have different campaigns and different style of gameplays and different types of games on top of that backbone system. So ultimately, I picked this up because I love Evil Dead, and I wanted to play an Evil Dead role-playing game with some friends, and I've actually scheduled out, and I got 4 wonderful people together scheduled to join me out for a single game session of Army of Darkness role-playing game, and we're going to play a little Evil Dead, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But the strength of this is that it really dives down to the mythology. And this is all pre the Stars series Ash versus Evil Dead, okay? So it goes Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn, and then Army of Darkness. Those are the 3 core movies when this role-playing game came out that this core book is centered on and focuses on. And so the Stars TV series Ash versus the Evil Dead has actually expanded the mythology and updated since this was released, and so it's not quite 100% accurate anymore. But up until the time it was published, it was 100% accurate. That being said, if you want to play an Ash character and you want to go around kicking Deadite butt with a shotgun in one hand and a chainsaw strapped to the stub of your arm in your other hand, you can do that with this game. And you can have a blast fighting Deadites and zombies and traveling through time, going back to, air quotes, medieval 1300s England, which it was filmed in California, so it looks nothing like England. But you can go back to England and play through the entire Army of Darkness story, and it's all presented there, and it's all statted out for an adventure, and it even gives you ways of changing the adventure up so people who really are obsessed about Army of Darkness and know every single one-liner that Ash throws out, they would even be surprised by some of the changes and alterations while still maintaining the core of the story itself. So it's not boring, ostensibly. So that's the strength of this game, is that you get to play in the Evil Dead world and have some fun traveling through time, and that opens up huge possibilities for characters out of time, meaning a modern character in a a historical setting or a modern character in a futuristic setting. Because if you ever watch the director's cut of Army of Darkness, which is different than the theatrical cut, then you know that Ash didn't actually go back to his normal time. He like slept too long and he went into the future, which is very similar to the ending of Ash versus the Evil Dead series in Stars. So it gives you options of going, all the way back to when the Necronomicon was first in Evil Dead canon created, which was like 3,000 years BC in ancient Sumeria, sort of the era of Gilgamesh, the sort of the first epic written story of all human culture that we know of so far. So it goes all the way back to the beginning and gives you all this, like tons of information and sort of choices to really flesh out any type of story that you want. So if you really wanted to follow the films, you could, and quite easily with this system. If you wanted to deviate from the films, you have all the tools you need in order to deviate from the films. And that, I think, is really exciting, especially for people who really love horror. And it has rule systems for dealing with fear and gore for the first time, which is why I think it's so important, because that first time a head explodes and blood, brains, and bones splatter all over your face in Evil Dead should be shocking. It shouldn't be like, well, I've seen the movies and so that doesn't bother me as a player, so my character's not going to care about it. No. There's actually game mechanics for dealing with those initial exposures to the goriness of the Evil Dead world. And that will then affect your character. It's very simple and very stripped down, but the fact that they're there in the similar way that Call of Cthulhu deals with sanity and fear, it really ties together the game system with the theme of Army of Darkness / Evil Dead. And that's what's important if you're really wanting to pick this particular book up to play Army of Darkness. Now, it is important to note here that the Unisystem role-playing backbone underneath the Army of Darkness game, which is also shared with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I think it's called Witchcraft, and there's like a bunch of different games that Eden Studios puts out with this bare-bones system underneath it. This is a different version of that. It's not entirely dissimilar, it's just simplified and stripped down a little bit. So they don't have as many stats, they don't deal with magic and stuff like that. Stuff like that is important to the other intellectual properties that Unisystem operates in, but it's not so much to Army of Darkness. If none of this really makes any sense to you, then go play Monopoly. You'll feel better. If you're a role player, then this stuff is kind of important to understand, because if you pick up Buffy the Vampire Slayer role-playing game and you want to play Army of Darkness, it's not really going to fit 100%, though the majority of it will. All right, so let's see, what are the points here? So the selling points for players of this game is that players get to reenact the movie as Ash, or create your own characters and play in the setting. And what I thought was really interesting is that they created pre-generated characters for every main character in Army of Darkness, which is cool. So you get it, if you want to do Ash, you can play Ash, who wouldn't? If you want to play the Wise Man, if you want to play Henry the Red, if you want to play Arthur, I mean, you can play them all. Even Sheila, before she turns evil, and even, after she turns evil, you can play her. And then zombie killing fun. Everyone loves zombies, and don't forget chainsaws. So it talks about how to not only, it presents monsters that are in the film Army of Darkness. So you got your skeletons, your wights, your captains, your evil Ash, which is hilarious, your little mini evil Ashes that, when he's in the windmill and he breaks the mirror, and then all the tiny little Ashes come out and start attacking Big Ash. It stats out everything. It stats out the Necronomicon. It gives you information about the different spells, different powers the Necronomicon has, the different ways you can use it as a director in the game, or Dungeon Master in the game. Different powers that it has, which is very kind of cool. And then the easy gameplay. It makes great one-shot game sessions, which we're going to test on this channel. We're going to find out how easy it actually is. And then you can either play it seriously or campy. And that's what I love about Evil Dead franchise, is that Evil Dead 1, yes, it had some campy-ish elements, but it was more creepy campy, not silly campy. And it was scary. Evil Dead 2 took it a little bit more humorous, not more campy. It was still creepy campy, but it was a little more humorous. And then Army of Darkness went full camp and full, just jokes and sort of Three Stooges type humor. And I love it all. And so I don't mind it at all. But if you have a particular style that you prefer, or your players have a particular style you prefer, you can just use that and lean into it. So if you just want to quote Ash lines throughout the whole game session, then do it and have a blast doing it. That's the strength of this. And then selling points for retailers, for different gaming stores. Army of Darkness, of course, is a cult hit for gamers. So, of course, people are going to buy this up just based on the name alone, like I did. And then it's compatible with other Unisystem role-playing games like Buffy the Vampire Slayer. If you just want to have this sort of shared universe, you can go ahead and do that. One thing I wanted to touch on is the vernacular of role-playing, because there's, this sort of the juggernaut in the role-playing room is Dungeons and Dragons, and they've sort of set the stage. People that came up after and during Dungeons and Dragons' reign were like the White Wolf games, like Vampire the Masquerade, for example. And so they sort of changed some of the vernacular, some of the language, referencing the same roles. So you have a person playing a character, which is called a playing character, and then you have a person running the players through the game, and that's called the Dungeon Master. In Army of Darkness and Unisystem, the person running the game for the players instead of Dungeon Master is called the Director, because it's about a film, Army of Darkness. And so the Director is directing the cast members, which are the playing characters. So Bruce Campbell is not Ash Williams, he's Bruce Campbell. He's the actor. So the player would be you playing, if not Ash Williams, then another character. You are called a cast member. And then there's something called non-playing characters, which are the regular people that you meet throughout a regular game that are not played by a player. They're played by the director or Dungeon Master. In this game, they're called supporting cast. And then, of course, you have friendly supporting cast members called guest stars. That would be like Arthur or Henry the Red or the Wise Man in Army of Darkness, the film. And then you have enemy non-playing characters called adversaries, which would be like Evil Ash and Evil Sheila and stuff like that. Of course, each individual gaming session when you get together is called an episode. So it's very much like a TV series. So the director is taking the cast members through the episode. And when you have a bunch of episodes in a row, in Dungeons and Dragons vernacular, it would be called a campaign. In this, it's called a season. So you have a season of episodes, a linking of different gaming sessions, which create the season. So it's very much in a sort of a TV/film, vernacular, and that's really what this game focuses on. So you can really immerse yourself in the idea that you're telling a story. It's supposed to be based on a film/TV series, and you're supposed to be playing a role as a player and directing characters as a director. Part of the strength of the Unisystem game system is that the randomness is taken out. So, for example, when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons or most role-playing games, you just roll dice for each of your stats. In this, you buy them. So you start with a total amount of points, and you, as the player, decide what you want your character to be like. So you dump in certain amounts of points in different stats so that the character itself ends up being strong in some things that you want them to be strong in, and weak in other things that you want them to be weak in. And the importance in role-playing when it comes to characters and interesting characters is that they have flaws. They have weaknesses. Ash is incredibly lucky, more than anything else, he's lucky, but he's also fairly strong and he's fairly witty, but he's actually really self-centered the whole time. He doesn't care about all the people in Army of Darkness surviving or not. He just wants to get home. Everything he does is for his own selfish way to get his ass back home and work at S-Mart again. Shop smart, shop S-Mart. But that's his whole point. So he's very egocentrical. He's kind of a shitty human being, to be quite honest. And that's why we laugh at him, and that's why we think he's funny, because he's not like regular human beings. He has as many weaknesses as he has his strengths, and that's really the best way of fleshing out a character and having fun at a table, is being good at some things, but being really bad at other things. So you have the comedic element to it. And then, they refer to characters in 3 different types. Okay, so you have your primitive screwhead, which is your average, everyday, normal person. They're not very good at much, and they're bad at pretty much everything. They're just your average Joe on the street. Then you have your hero, and that's, if you watched Ash versus the Evil Dead, it's going to be the people with Ash. Right now, I'm drawing a blank on their names, but the girl and boy that are with him for the majority of the series, they're the heroes. And then you have the experienced hero. That's going to be Ash Williams, the hero that is really great at everything. They've already dealt with Deadites before. They know what's going on. And this gives you varying levels of skill, right? So the primitive screwheads are they have the smallest amount of points to make themselves, and they're just not very successful at stuff. You have the heroes, which have a fair amount of points that make them pretty daunting. And you have the experienced hero, which makes them very daunting, but still, again, grounded by their weaknesses. So you have your qualities, your drawbacks, your skills, your attributes, and all of that is sort of wrapped around this idea of combat. It would not be Evil Dead if you were not fighting for your life. Now, whether that's Evil Dead getting into your hand and you have to cut it off and then the hand's coming after you, or whether it's your friends who are infected that are coming after you, or whether it's some random hillbilly that just happened to cross your cabin that is infected, that they're coming after you. You have, these bad guys, but you have to fight them. You have to destroy the evil. You have to fight off the demons. And so they have something called combat maneuvers. This can be shooting a shotgun. This could be grappling someone and bashing their head against a refrigerator or something. But these are the ways that you fight the dead. They also have something called drama points. And this is an interesting game mechanic because it's very similar to, if you know you cannot succeed at something, then you use a drama point in order to then have a better chance at succeeding it. And it's really meant to be, you're on the ropes, you're ready to die, the demons got you at death's door. You use a drama point, and then suddenly you get this resurgence of energy, and you can fight the Deadite back again. So it's just a way of giving players that sort of extra leg up. Now, bad guys also have drama points, but they don't really use them the same way that heroes do. And so it's just a way of giving heroes an opportunity of being heroic and doing things that they normally would not be able to do for the betterment of the story. And that's what I really like about them, is that it's not meant to simply give you a leg up because you run out of them. And you're rewarded by the director with drama points when you do something in character that's creative and fun, or maybe you deliver a really witty one-liner that's funny and the director really likes it. Well, then he or she might give you a drama point for you then to use at a later point. Again, I already mentioned the fear and panic tables, which I thought was really interesting. You get used to gore just like you do in real life the more you're exposed to it. But those initial times, it's important to see how you react. And these tables give you that opportunity to sort of react. Ultimately, when it comes down to how, who goes first, usually that's done through something called rounds or turns. And then those turns represent a specific amount of time. If you've ever been in a fight, or if you ever watched a fight, whether it's on TV in real life, it's over very quick. People throw punches, they get exhausted, they get hit, they get tired, they fall down on the ground, they wrestle around for a while, and you sort of just stop fighting anymore because you're just your adrenaline stopped working and you're exhausted. Or you've just given up, or you've been beaten up, being unconscious. Like, that's how it works out in life. Combat is very quick, very short, very fast, and then it's over. Same thing in the game system. Each turn of you hitting and then them hitting you is about 5 seconds. So it's very quick. So that really tapers down what you can do in a turn. So you wouldn't run to the telephone, call your parents. They would drive over and give you, more ammo or something. There's just not enough time to do all that. But you could run over the telephone, pick it up, and call your parents. That's enough time to do that. Or take the telephone and bash a Deadite in the head a couple times. That's possible as well with a drama point. Usually you can do one thing to attack and then one thing to defend, and that's the entirety of the turn. And then it also, what I thought was really interesting, this drives me back, way back to Advanced Dungeons and Dragons days. It presents a cinematic battle system in this as well. It's not an added book or anything. There's just one book, and it has everything to play the game as, the book and the game system itself and the setting. But then it also gives you this mass battle or mass combat system, which is very streamlined, very simple, not complex at all. But it allows you to play through like Army of Darkness when the Army of Darkness is in like attacking Arthur's castle. How would you resolve that in the game? You don't want to have each individual monster or deadite attacking each individual archer or soldier defending the castle. You want to do it on a larger scale. This gives you the rules to do it, and it is very simple and it's very straightforward, but it still feels large scale enough that it's believable, and you can extrapolate it out if you want to go to ancient Rome or you want to go to the future to like cyberpunk, dystopian future. You can still apply the same mass combat rules in the Evil Dead / Army of Darkness universe, no matter what time you're in, as far as year of our Lord, as it were. Now I want to talk about the actual book itself, because everything up until now is pretty interesting. It's pretty simple. You can grasp it if you played role-playing games before, and the Unisystem is pretty simple. It's not complex at all. There's a bit of a learning curve. But it's made infinitely more confusing and complex because they wrote this as if it's someone wisecracking the entire time. Every single paragraph of every single page is someone wisecracking as they're explaining the rules of the game. And that is annoying as fuck. It's one thing to be at a table with your friends who you know and you know their humor and you're just enjoying the banter back and forth. It's another thing when you're trying to learn a game and is just constantly giving parentheticals and side topics and side jokes, and like, you don't need that. I don't know why you did that. I don't know if you're doing it to pad out the pages so that the book seems bigger than it needed to be, or if you're trying to pay homage to Army of Darkness, but it's unsuccessful and it's annoying. Like, really, just strip the damn game mechanics down. Have a chapter all in that voice if that's what you're doing. But then have the game mechanics and the rules in a straightforward, simple presentation. They don't do that, and it makes it infinitely harder to understand everything. Because what you're doing is reading and then like mocking the fucking writers for their shitty one-liner jokes and references. And then you have to go back and reread it again without the parentheticals so that you can actually understand the fucking rule. It's just really aggravating as someone who's just trying to get the basics of the system down so I can run my friends through it. There's no need for that nonsense. Have it in the introductory paragraph or chapter, but then get the fuck out of it and just give me the goddamn game. It's like they're trying to be cheeky. They're trying to be like Ash versus Evil Dead or something, but they fail, and it sucks. So if you guys ever revisit this and sort of give a second edition with content from Ash versus the Evil Dead, which I think you should, cut that bullshit out. Second, I want to talk about the quality of this book. Like, I'm in advertising professionally. I'm a graphic designer, art director. Like, that's what I do for a living. This book looks like shit, and it's really aggravating. They have shitty, like, film screenshots throughout this book. The way that they lined up their type, and the way that the colors they're using and the backdrop they're using for all of the pages, it's messy. It frustrates your eye. You don't know where you're supposed to be focusing on, and it looks like shit. And it's so aggravating as someone who does this for a living. There's also, and I know this is an old book, so I don't know how rushed they were in getting it out, but like, there's a lot of errors in it. Like not just typographical errors, but like just errors in general, misspellings and stuff. This is a PDF. I bought this from drivethrurpg.com. There's a link in the description below. It's like $10. Like, update it. Find the errors, correct them, and re-upload the PDF. But re-upload it as a high-quality PDF. This thing is pixelated. It looks like shit. Yes, you can select the text and copy and paste the text, which is great, but there's no, like, chapters. For example, most PDFs, if you've ever used a PDF before in your life, they have bookmarks that you can then jump to. You click a button on what says chapter 2, and then it goes to chapter 2 in the PDF. So you can just jump to different sections at different time. This doesn't have that. Of all the insane things not to have, bookmarks in a goddamn PDF, why do I have to scroll through every page to get to a section? And then when I try to add my own bookmarks, it's locked, so I can't. What the fuck are you doing? That's the most annoying thing you can ever do, Eden Studios. So that's going to cost you on my rating, for all you fucking care. But still, like, it's very simple stuff that makes this much more accessible. I could do it for you in a half an hour and have it updated and uploaded infinitely better. It doesn't take you anything. Let me do it on your behalf for free. I will do it. Give me an opportunity to do it just for my own sense of sanity. The typography in this, the font choices in this, it's all really aggravating. If you're going to put out a product, make sure it's visually appealing. Full stop, before anything else. And then think about how you're going to integrate the genre, the voice, the appearance, the imagery. Make sure it's simple and understood for people to use. Like, they randomly throw character stats throughout, like, pepper them in throughout the book. Instead of having, like, this is the monsters section where we list all of the different monsters. This is the combat section where we list all the combat maneuvers. This is the, you just sort of break it up in sections. They don't do that. They just sort of willy-nilly sprinkle it throughout. So the construction of this core book sucks. 100%. The concept of this core book is pretty good, and I really like it. So yes, I have complaints about it, but ultimately, I'm what you call a professional or something. So I can get around the faults of this volume and still tell a good story with good friends and have a good time, which is ultimately the point. So if you're brand new to role-playing, this might not be the game for you. Even if you're like steeped in horror like I am, if you're still not into role-playing, you're going to need someone to help you through this probably. Probably. If you already know about role-playing, then this should be easy for you to get around the headaches that this construction of this book presents to you. Even though it is frustrating, you can still work your way through it. And I would highly recommend that you give it a try. And I'll give you another review after our gaming session, what the characters or what the players thought, what I thought running the game, and how it actually plays. But just as far as this core book exists right now, I am forced to give it 3 evil eyes out of 5 evil eyes. There's a lot to like about this. And it's the core of it, which is the Evil Dead and Army of Darkness, that I really like. They do a great job of giving you alternate timelines to explore through. They give you an introductory adventure to go through if you want to sort of play that Army of Darkness vibe. They tell you how to play the film if you want to play the film. So you have a lot of, sort of out of the box, as it were, playing options. They also give you weapons and combat maneuvers and, different monsters to throw at the players and different rules for the monsters to follow to sort of make logical sense and stuff as you see them in the films. So all of that is great, and you can't knock that because it's what you love about Evil Dead and Army of Darkness. The system itself is meh. It's not great. It's not terrible. It's meh. I'll play it. And if I enjoy it, then I might play it again. I might do a whole campaign around it if I have a good story in mind. And I'm sort of formulating one now. The construction of the book, the design of the book, flat out sucks. So you have to face the reality of that. That's going to affect how people receive the game before any rules are read, before anything is presented. Just how you have put this book together tells people that it sucks. So that's on you, and you have to own that. And that's not objective. I'm sorry, that's not subjective. That's objective. But in either case, it is something that I'm going to explore with friends. It is something that I'm looking forward to playing. And I'm going to be playing it over the top, gory, campy, as much as the players will allow it. I'm going to go there. And I hope that you guys tune in. I've already got it up in the channel as a live stream. So if you are not already subscribed, go ahead and subscribe and make sure you click that little bell icon so that you can be notified when we're going to be playing. Because I think you're going to enjoy watching it. If you like Evil Dead, if you like Army of Darkness, you're probably going to enjoy the game that we're going to be playing. It's only a one-off, a max of 3 hours. And we're going to try to do our best to entertain you while entertaining each other at the same time. All right? So, again, I recommend checking this out. It's not the best, but give it a go and see what you think. That's what I thought. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and spending your time with me. And as always, remember, evil spelled backwards is live, so get out there and be evil.